The siren screamed through the night as Karen Matthews pressed the accelerator, her blood-stained hands gripping the steering wheel. In her rearview mirror, the warehouse she'd just escaped blazed orange against the darkness. "I was trying to save them," she whispered, her voice breaking. But the 3 children in her backseat weren't victims she'd rescued, they were witnesses to what she'd done. And now, racing toward a roadblock she couldn't see coming, Karen was about to discover that her desperate attempt to be a hero had made her the monster in someone else's story. Karen Matthews had always believed that good people did good things, and bad people got what they deserved. At 42, she'd built her entire identity around this simple moral framework. As she sat in a silver Honda Civic outside Roosevelt Elementary, waiting for the crossing guard to wave her through, she adjusted her world's best mom coffee mug and smiled at her reflection in the rearview mirror. The radio crackled with the morning news. Police are still searching for 3 missing children from the Riverside neighborhood. 8-year-old Marcus Johnson, 6-year-old twins Emma and Ethan Rodriguez were last seen. Karen turned up the volume, her stomach tightening. Missing children always affected her deeply, especially since she'd started volunteering with the local search and rescue organization 6 months ago. She joined after watching too many true crime documentaries, driven by a burning need to make a difference in a world that seemed increasingly dark. Her phone buzzed. A text from her ex-husband, David. "Can you pick up Tyler early today? Have a work thing?" Karen's jaw clenched. David always had a work thing when it came to their 14-year-old son. She typed back, "Fine. But this is the 3rd time this month." The crossing guard waved her through and Karen drove toward her job at Mercy General Hospital, where she worked as a patient advocate. It was perfect work for someone who saw herself as a protector of the vulnerable, a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. The hospital parking lot buzzed with unusual activity. Police cars lined the emergency entrance and Karen spotted Detective Lisa Chen, whom she'd met during her search and rescue training, talking intensely with Dr. Patel. "Excuse me," Karen called out, approaching them. "Is everything okay? I saw the news about the missing children." Detective Chen looked up, her expression strained. "Karen, right? From the SAA group?" When Karen nodded, Chen continued, "We've got a situation. The missing kids, we have reason to believe they are being held somewhere in the industrial district. But our search teams are stretched thin." "I could help," Karen said immediately. "I know that area pretty well from my training exercises." Dr. Patel shook his head. This is a police matter." "We can't have civilians, actually," Chen interrupted, studying Karen's eager face. "You might be useful. You know the area, and you're trained. But you'd have to follow protocol exactly. No heroics." Karen's heart raced. This was it, her chance to actually make a difference, to be more than just someone who organized food drives and shared missing persons posts on Facebook. 2 hours later, Karen found herself in her car, following a police radio frequency as she searched the maze of abandoned warehouses and empty lots that made up the Riverside Industrial District. The official search teams were focusing on the eastern sector, but Karen had a hunch about the old Mitchell Textiles building on the west side. Something about its isolated location and recent vandalism reports made her suspicious. She parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, just as she'd been trained. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of rust and decay from the abandoned factories. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone to call Detective Chen. No signal. Karen stared at the blank screen, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. She should go back to her car, drive to where she could get a signal, and call for backup. That was protocol. But what if she was right? What if those children were in there right now, scared and hurt, waiting for someone to find them? How could she live with herself if she walked away and something terrible happened because she'd played it safe? She crept closer to the building, her SAR training kicking in. Look for signs of recent activity. Check for multiple exit routes. Stay aware of your surroundings. The loading dock door was slightly ajar. Karen's pulse hammered as she approached it, every nerve screaming at her to call for backup. But the silence from the building felt wrong, too quiet, like a held breath. She slipped through the gap in the door. The warehouse was vast and dark, filled with the skeletons of old machinery and piles of rotting fabric. Shafts of light from grimy windows created a maze of shadows that seemed to shift and move. Karen pulled out her phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom. "Hello," she called softly. "Is anyone there?" A muffled sound from deeper in the building made her freeze. It sounded like a whimpering. Karen moved toward the sound, her heart racing. As she rounded a corner formed by stacked crates, her flashlight beam fell on a horrifying sight: 3 children, bound and gagged, huddled together on a dirty mattress. "Oh my God," she whispered, rushing toward them. "It's okay, I'm here to help. I'm going to get you out of here." The children's eyes were wide with terror above their gags. Karen recognized them from the news photos: Marcus, Emma, and Ethan. They were alive, and she'd found them. She fumbled with the ropes binding Marcus's hands, her fingers clumsy with adrenaline. "It's okay, sweetie. My name is Karen. I'm going to take you home to your families." A slow clap echoed through the warehouse, freezing Karen's blood. Well, look what we have here." Karen spun around, her flashlight beam revealing a man emerging from the shadows. He was in his 30s, thin and wiry, with dead eyes that reflected no light. In his hand was a gun, pointed directly at her chest. "A real good Samaritan," the man continued, his voice carrying an accent she couldn't place. "I was wondering when someone would find my little hiding spot." "Please," Karen said, positioning herself between the man and the children. "Take me instead. They are just babies. They don't deserve this." The man laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Deserve? Lady, you have no idea what these kids deserve. What any of us deserve. What do you want?" Karen asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Money. I can get you money." "I want what I've already got," he said, gesturing with the gun toward the children. 3 very special little witnesses to some very bad things their parents did. Things that need to be balanced out. Karen's mind raced. This wasn't a simple kidnapping. This was revenge. Their parents can't help what they witnessed, she said desperately. "But you can still walk away from this. You can still do the right thing." The man's expression hardened. "The right thing? Like what Marcus's daddy did when he saw me getting beaten half to death by those cops? Or what Emma and Ethan's mama did when she watched my sister get run down in that hit and run? They all did the right thing, they minded their own business." The pieces clicked together in Karen's mind with sickening clarity. This man wasn't some random predator. He was someone who'd been failed by the system, by witnesses who'd chosen silence over justice. And now he was evening the score with the innocence. "So you're going to hurt children because their parents made bad choices?" Karen asked, her voice gaining strength. "How does that make you any better than them?" "It doesn't," the man said simply. "But it makes us even." Karen heard sirens in the distance, faint but growing closer. Someone must have seen her car, or maybe Detective Chen had sent backup when she didn't check in. Hope flared in her chest. The man heard them too. His grip tightened on the gun. "Looks like our time's up," he said. "But don't worry, lady. You can come with us. You're a witness now too." "I won't let you take them," Karen said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. The man smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Karen had ever seen. "You know what? I believe you." He raised the gun, and Karen lunged forward without thinking, her body moving on pure instinct to protect the children behind her. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Pain exploded through Karen's shoulder, spinning her around, but she kept moving, tackling the man around the waist. They crashed into a stack of crates, wood splintering around them. The gun skidded across the concrete floor. Karen scrambled for it, her injured arm useless, her vision blurring from pain and shock. The man recovered faster, kicking her in the ribs and sending her sprawling. He dove for the gun just as the sirens reached the building's entrance. "Police! Building is surrounded." The man grabbed the weapon and turned toward the children, his face twisted with rage. "If I can't have justice, nobody gets anything. Karen saw the gun rising toward Marcus, saw the finger tightening on the trigger, and knew she had one chance. She grabbed a shard of broken crate and drove it into the man's leg with all her remaining strength. He screamed and fell, the gun firing wild into the ceiling. Karen threw herself over the children as debris rained down, her blood soaking into their clothes as she shielded them with her body. The warehouse door exploded inward, flooding the space with light and the sounds of shouting officers. Karen felt consciousness slipping away, but she kept her arms wrapped around the children, whispering, "It's over. You're safe. It's over." But as the paramedics were, Karen awoke to the sterile smell of disinfectant and the steady beep of monitors. Her shoulder throbbed beneath layers of bandages, but the pain was manageable thanks to whatever they'd given her through the fall. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window and she realized she must have been unconscious for hours. "You're awake." Detective Chen sat in the chair beside her bed, looking exhausted. Dark circles ringed her eyes and her usually crisp uniform was wrinkled. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot," Karen said, attempting a weak smile. "But alive." "The children are they okay?" "They are fine, thanks to you." Chen leaned forward, her expression serious. "Karen, what you did was incredibly brave. And incredibly stupid. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. And those babies are safe." Karen tried to sit up, wincing at the movement. "Have they been reunited with their families?" Something flickered across Chen's face, too quick to identify, but it made Karen's stomach clench with unease. "That's complicated right now," Chen said carefully. "The children are in protective custody while we sort through some details." "What kind of details?" Chen stood, pacing to the window. "The man you fought, his name is Viktor Kozlov. He's been on our radar for months. Small-time criminal, but has been making noise about some kind of conspiracy involving local officials and a cover-up. He said the children were witnesses to something their parents did. Or didn't do. Yeah, we're looking into that." Chen's voice was clipped, professional. "But right now, I need to ask you about what happened in that warehouse. Walk me through everything from the moment you entered the building." Karen recounted the events, watching Chen's face for any reaction. The detective took notes, occasionally asking for clarification, but something felt off about the whole conversation. Chen seemed more interested in Karen's actions than in Victor's motivations. "Detective," Karen said when she'd finished, "what aren't you telling me?" "Those children looked at me strangely when the paramedics arrived. Like they were afraid of me." Chen's pen stopped moving. "They'd been through a traumatic experience, Karen. Sometimes victims of kidnapping develop complicated feelings about their rescuers. It's not uncommon." Before Karen could respond, the door opened and Dr. Martinez, her attending physician, entered with a broad smile. "Our hero is awake," he announced. "Ms. Matthews, you're all over the news. Channel 7 wants an interview and the mayor's office called to congratulate you personally." Karen felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone would do." "Anyone wouldn't have taken a bullet to save 3 children they'd never met," Dr. Martinez said. "Your son Tyler is here, by the way. He's been worried sick." A few minutes later, Tyler burst through the door, his 14-year-old face streaked with tears. "Mom. Oh God, I thought you were going to die." Karen wrapped her good arm around him, breathing in the familiar scent of his hair gel and teenage cologne. "I'm okay, baby. I'm right here." "Dad's in the hallway," Tyler said, pulling back to look at her. "He's been freaking out too. Says he's sorry for all the times he gave you crap about your volunteer work." David appeared in the doorway, looking older than his 45 years. He and Karen had divorced 2 years ago, but seeing her in the hospital bed seemed to strip away their usual animosity. "Jesus, Karen," he said quietly. "When I heard what happened, Tyler was right to be proud of you. You saved those kids." The attention felt overwhelming. Karen had always wanted to make a difference, to be recognized for doing good, but now that it was happening, something felt wrong. Maybe it was the medication, or maybe it was the way Detective Chen kept watching her with those calculating eyes. I need some air, Karen said. Tyler, can you help me to the garden? 20 minutes later, Karen sat in a wheelchair on the hospital's Memorial Garden patio, Tyler pushing her slowly along the winding paths. The October afternoon was crisp, and the smell of dying leaves reminded her of her childhood. Mom, Tyler said hesitantly, there's something weird about this whole thing. What do you mean? I was watching the news while you were unconscious. They interviewed some neighbors from where those kids lived. And they are not saying what you'd expect. Karen's stomach tightened. What are they saying? Tyler stopped pushing the wheelchair and came around to face her. They are saying the kids weren't really missing. Like, their parents knew where they were. And that Marcus Johnson's dad is some kind of informant for the police, and Emma and Ethan's mom works for the district attorney's office. That doesn't make sense, Karen said slowly. If the parents knew where they were, why would there be a search? That's what I thought too. But Mom, what if those kids weren't kidnapped? What if they were hidden somewhere safe, and you accidentally found them? Karen stared at her son, her mind reeling. Tyler, that's impossible. I saw them tied up. They were terrified. Were they terrified of the bad guy, or terrified of being found? Before Karen could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Come to the Riverside Diner on 5th Street at 8 p.m. Come alone. A friend. Karen showed the message to Tyler, whose face went pale. Mom, you can't go. What if it's a trap? What if it's someone who can explain what's really happening here? Karen countered. Tyler, if there's even a chance that I made some kind of mistake, you didn't make a mistake. Tyler's voice cracked with emotion. You saved 3 kids from a psycho with a gun. But Karen's certainty was beginning to crack. She thought about the children's expressions, Detective Chen's evasive answers, and Victor's cryptic words about witnesses and justice. That evening, against Tyler's protests and Dr. Martinez's medical advice, Karen discharged herself from the hospital. Her arm was in a sling, and every movement sent spikes of pain through her shoulder, but she had to know the truth. The Riverside Diner was a greasy spoon in one of the city's forgotten neighborhoods, the kind of place where conversations were private and nobody asked questions. Karen arrived at 8:15, scanning the nearly empty restaurant until she spotted a woman in a corner booth, late 30s, Hispanic, with tired eyes and nervous hands. You must be Karen, the woman said as Karen approached. I'm Maria Rodriguez, Emma and Ethan's mother. Karen slid into the booth across from her, studying the woman's face. There was something familiar about her features, but she couldn't place where she might have seen her before. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm so glad your children are safe. I can't imagine what you've been going through. Cut the bullshit, Maria interrupted, her voice low and angry. You know exactly what I've been going through because you're part of it. Karen's blood turned to ice. I don't understand. Maria leaned across the table, her eyes blazing. 3 months ago, you were working late at the hospital. You were in the parking garage around 11 p.m. and you saw something you shouldn't have seen. Do you remember now? Images flashed through Karen's memory, the parking garage, the sound of an argument, a dark sedan with its engine running. She'd been distracted, fumbling with her keys, when she heard shouting. By the time she looked up, she'd only caught a glimpse of 2 figures struggling near a car before one of them fell. Oh. I saw an accident, Karen said slowly. Someone fell and hit their head. I called for help, but by the time the paramedics arrived, it wasn't an accident, Maria said through gritted teeth. It was murder. And you were the only witness. Karen's hands began to shake. That's impossible. The police said what they were told to say. The man who died was Victor Kozlov's sister's boyfriend. He was going to testify about corruption in the DA's office. About cases being fixed, evidence being buried. My boss, the man you saw push him, had millions of reasons to keep him quiet. The diner seemed to spin around Karen. You work for the DA's office. I'm the senior paralegal. And I've been helping to cover up murders and frame innocent people for 2 years because they have my children. Maria's voice broke. When Victor started making threats, when he said he was going to expose everything, they decided to use my babies as leverage. They told me Victor had kidnapped them, but really, they moved Emma and Ethan to that warehouse to keep them away from him. But Victor had them tied up because he'd finally tracked them down and was trying to free them when you showed up. Maria wiped tears from her eyes. You shot the one man who was trying to save my children from being used as pawns. Karen felt the world collapsing around her. No. No, that's not. I saved them. I'm a hero. You're a witness who was supposed to stay quiet, Maria said bitterly. But when you started volunteering for search and rescue, when you got too close to Detective Chen's operation, they decided to kill two birds with one stone. Make you think you were saving my children while actually ensuring Victor could never tell anyone what he knew. Detective Chen is involved. Detective Chen is my boss's sister-in-law. This whole thing was orchestrated to get you to that warehouse. To make you believe you were doing something good while they cleaned up their mess. Karen's mind raced through the events of the past day, seeing them now through a different lens. Chen's convenient appearance at the hospital, her knowledge of Karen's SAR training, the way she'd guided Karen toward the industrial district. The children, Karen whispered. They know. Maria nodded. Emma and Ethan have been living with the KN. Karen sat in her car outside the Riverside Diner for 20 minutes after Maria left, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Every instinct screamed at her to drive straight to the FBI field office downtown. To find someone, anyone, who wasn't part of Detective Chen's web of corruption. But Maria's words echoed in her mind, Chen's people have been watching you since you left the hospital. As if summoned by her paranoia, Karen spotted a dark SUV in her rearview mirror. It had been there when she'd arrived at the diner, and it was still there now, engine running. The windows were tinted, but she could make out the silhouette of at least two figures inside. Her phone buzzed. A text from Detective Chen. Karen, we need to talk. There have been some developments in the case. Can you meet me at the station? Karen stared at the message, her heart hammering. 12 hours ago, she would have rushed to help however she could. Now, every word felt like a trap. She typed back. Still recovering. Can it wait until tomorrow? The response came immediately, I'm afraid not. This is urgent. Karen looked in her rearview mirror again. The sub's headlights flicked on. Instead of heading toward the police station, Karen took a winding route through the city's residential neighborhoods, confirming what she'd suspected. The SUV followed every turn, maintaining a careful distance. When she pulled into a 24-hour gas station and pretended to check her tire pressure, the SUV parked across the street. Her phone rang. Tyler. Mom, where are you? Dad's here freaking out because you left the hospital. Detective Chen called looking for you too. Tyler, listen to me very carefully, Karen said, keeping her voice calm despite the panic clawing at her throat. I need you and your dad to pack a bag and go stay at Aunt Sarah's house tonight. Don't ask questions, just do it. Mom, you're scaring me. What's going on? I can't explain right now, but I need you safe. Please, baby. Just trust me. After Tyler reluctantly agreed, Karen sat in her car, weighing her options. She could run, but where? She could try to contact federal authorities, but Maria was right, if Chen had this much reach, who could she trust? Or she could do what every fiber of her being told her was insane, she could walk into Chen's trap and try to turn the tables. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. Karen Matthews. The voice was gravelly, older, with the hint of an Eastern European accent. This is Dmitry Kozlov. Victor was my nephew. Karen's blood turned to ice. How did you get this number? The same way I know you're sitting in a Shell station on Madison Avenue with two of Chen's people watching you, Dmitry said. Victor told me about you before he died. About what you witnessed in that parking garage. I didn't witness anything, Karen said automatically. Dmitry's laugh was bitter. You saw Assistant District Attorney William Morrison push my nephew's girlfriend down those concrete stairs. You saw him check her pulse and walk away while she bled out. And you've been carrying that guilt for 3 months, telling yourself it was an accident because the alternative was too terrifying. Karen closed her eyes and suddenly she was back in the parking garage, fumbling with her keys after a 16-hour shift. The sound of voices raised in anger. Looking up to see a man in an expensive suit arguing with a young woman. The woman backing toward the stairs, shaking her head. The man's hands shooting out. "It happened so fast," Karen whispered. "Murder usually does," Dmitri said. Victor spent 2 months gathering evidence about Morrison's connections to organized crime, about cases that disappeared and witnesses who died in convenient accidents. He was going to expose everything until Morrison decided to silence him. Using those children as bait. Maria Rodriguez told me Victor was trying to save them. Victor was trying to save everyone. The children, their parents, you. He knew that once Morrison tied up all the loose ends, you'd be next. Dmitri's voice hardened. But she put a piece of wood through his leg and let him bleed out while Morrison's people finished the job. The accusation hit Karen like a physical blow. "I was trying to protect the children." "You were trying to protect your own conscience." "It was easier to believe you were a hero than to admit you'd watched a murder and done nothing." Karen felt tears burn in her eyes. "What do you want from me?" "I want justice for my nephew. And I want Morrison to pay for what is done." Dmitri's voice softened slightly. Victor left behind evidence, documents, recordings, photographs. Everything needed to bring down Morrison's entire operation. But it's hidden somewhere only someone with access to the children can find. "What do you mean?" "The children know where Victor hid the evidence. Emma Rodriguez has been passing coded messages to her mother through the drawings she makes during therapy sessions. But Morrison has them so isolated, so watched, that Maria can't get close enough to understand what Emma's trying to tell her." Karen looked in her rearview mirror. The SUV was still there, patient as death. "Even if I wanted to help," she said, "Chen's people are following me. I can't get anywhere near those children." "You can if you let them think you're playing their game," Dmitri said. "Go to Chen. Tell her you remember something new about the warehouse. Something that makes Victor look even worse. Make her trust you enough to let you near the children." "And then what?" "Then you get Emma alone and find out where Victor hid the evidence that will destroy Morrison and free those children from being pawns in their parents' corruption." Karen's mind raced through the implications. "You're asking me to lie to the police, manipulate traumatized children, and steal evidence." "I'm asking you to finish what you should have done 3 months ago," Dmitri said sharply. "I'm asking you to finally be the hero you've been pretending to be." The line went dead. Karen sat in the gas station parking lot, watching the SUV watch her, and felt the last of her illusions crumble away. For 42 years, she'd believed that good intentions were enough, that following the rules and trusting the system would somehow make the world better. But good intentions had made her blind to murder. Following the rules had made her complicit in corruption. And trusting the system had turned her into a weapon against the very people she'd wanted to protect. She started her car and drove toward the police station. Detective Chen was waiting for her in interview room B, along with a man Karen had never seen before, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of expensive suit that screamed political power. Even before Chen made introductions, Karen knew she was looking at Assistant District Attorney William Morrison. "Ms. Matthews," Morrison said, extending his hand with a politician's practiced smile. "I can't thank you enough for what you did yesterday. Those children are safe because of your courage." Karen shook his hand, fighting the urge to recoil. This was the man she'd seen push a young woman to her death. This was the man who'd orchestrated Victor's murder and turned 3 children into prisoners. "I just did what anyone would do," she said, the familiar phrase feeling like acid on her tongue. "Modesty," Morrison said, settling into his chair. "I wish more citizens had your sense of civic duty." Chen opened a file folder, spreading photos across the table. Crime scene shots from the warehouse, pictures of Victor's body, images of the children being loaded into ambulances. "We need to go over your statement one more time," Chen said. "There are some inconsistencies we need to clear up." Karen forced herself to look confused. Inconsistencies. Morrison leaned forward. Viktor Kozlov has been making serious allegations about corruption in my office. Completely unfounded, of course, but the kind of conspiracy theories that can damage innocent reputations. We need to make sure your testimony makes it clear that he was an unstable individual capable of kidnapping children. He seemed unhinged. Karen said carefully. Talking about justice and balance like he was trying to even some kind of score. Exactly, Chen said, making notes. Did he say anything else? Mention any names, any specific grievances? This was the moment. Karen could feel Morrison and Chen hanging on her next words, ready to pounce on any information that might lead them to Victor's evidence. She thought about Emma Rodriguez drawing coded messages that her mother couldn't understand. She thought about Marcus Johnson carrying the weight of his father's betrayals. She thought about Tyler, whom she'd sent away because she could no longer trust the system that was supposed to protect him. Actually, Karen said slowly, there was something else. Something I didn't mention before because I wasn't sure if it was important. Morrison's eyes sharpened. What kind of something? He mentioned hiding something. Said that even if he died, the truth would come out because he'd left it somewhere safe. Karen paused, watching their reactions. He said the children knew where it was. Chen and Morrison exchanged a look that confirmed everything Dmitri had told her. Did he say anything more specific? Morrison asked, his casual tone not quite masking the urgency beneath. No, but... Karen hesitated, as if wrestling with a decision. Look, I know this might be against protocol, but those children trust me now. If Victor did hide something, and if they know where it is, maybe I could talk to them. Help them understand that they are safe now, that they can tell us anything. Morrison's smile was predatory. Ms. Matthews, that's an excellent idea. Those children have been through a terrible trauma. Having someone they trust. The safe house was a modest two-story colonial in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where soccer moms walked their dogs and retired teachers tended rose gardens. Karen parked behind Detective Chen's unmarked sedan, noting the way. The curtains in neighboring houses twitched as residents peeked out at the unusual activity. They are in the living room, Chen said, leading Karen up the front walkway. Fair warning, they've been asking about you. Specifically, they want to know why you saved them. Karen's stomach clenched. What do you mean? Kids process trauma differently. Sometimes they fixate on details that don't make sense to them. Chen's voice was casual, but her eyes were watchful. Just to be prepared for some difficult questions. The house's interior was sterile and anonymous, generic furniture, bland artwork, the kind of temporary living space designed to leave no lasting impressions. Two social workers sat at a kitchen table, reviewing files, while a uniformed officer stood near the back door. In the living room, Karen found the three children she'd rescued 36 hours ago. Marcus Johnson sat in a corner chair, methodically tearing pages from a coloring book into perfect strips. 8 years old, with his father's broad shoulders already evident in his small frame, he looked up when Karen entered with eyes that seemed far too old for his face. Emma and Ethan Rodriguez were building something with Legos on the coffee table, not the random creations most 6-year-olds constructed, but an elaborate structure with distinct patterns. Emma's dark hair fell across her face as she worked, but Karen could see her lips moving silently, as if she were counting or reciting something. Hello, Karen said softly, settling onto the couch across from them. Do you remember me? Marcus stopped tearing paper. You're the lady who got shot. That's right. I'm Karen. I wanted to see how you were doing. Emma looked up from her Lego creation, and Karen was struck by the intensity in the little girl's dark eyes. Are you here to take us home? Oh. Karen glanced at Chen, who was pretending to check her phone while obviously listening to every word. I'm here to make sure you're okay. That you feel safe. We felt safe before, Ethan said quietly. He was smaller than his twin sister, with their mother's delicate features, but there was something fierce in his expression. Before you found us. The words hit Karen like a slap. She looked more closely at the children, seeing details she'd missed in the warehouse's chaos and darkness. Their clothes hadn't been dirty or torn. They'd shown no signs of physical abuse or malnourishment. And now that she thought about it, their restraints had been loose, more like they'd been positioned than actually bound. "Ethan," Chen interjected. With false cheer, "remember what we talked about. Sometimes our memories get confused when scary things happen." But Emma was studying Karen with an expression that reminded her uncomfortably of Maria Rodriguez. "My mama says you saw something bad happen and didn't tell anyone. She says that's why Uncle Victor had to try to save us himself." Chen stepped forward quickly. "Emma, Victor wasn't your uncle. He was a dangerous man he was Mama's friend," Emma interrupted. "He brought us candy and showed us pictures of his sister before the bad man killed her." Karen's heart raced. "What bad man?" The children exchanged glances, a complex communication that spoke of shared secrets and adult fears thrust upon young shoulders. Marcus spoke carefully, as if reciting something he'd memorized. "The man with the silver hair who comes to our house sometimes. The one who made Daddy start selling information to the police." Karen felt the blood drain from her face. Morrison had been to their homes. He'd been personally involved in corrupting their parents, turning them into willing accomplices in exchange for their children's safety. "Kids have active imaginations," Chen said, but her voice was strained. "Why don't you go play in the backyard while Ms. Matthews and I talk?" "We don't want to play," Emma said. "We want to show Karen what we built." She pushed the Lego creation across the coffee table. Up close, Karen could see it wasn't random at all. It was a detailed replica of a building, complete with windows, doors, and what looked like a parking garage underneath. "It's the place where Mama works," Emma explained. "See? This is where the elevators are, and this is where the bad man pushed the lady down the stairs." Karen's vision blurred. The children knew. They'd known all along that she'd witnessed Morrison's crime, that she'd been too cowardly and confused to act on what she'd seen. "That's very creative," Chen said, reaching for the Lego building. "But maybe we should." "No." Ethan grabbed the structure protectively. "Uncle Victor said if anything happened to him, we should show this to someone who would understand. Someone who was there." Chen's hand moved toward her service weapon, a subtle shift, but Karen caught it. The detective was done pretending. This was about the children's welfare. "Karen," Chen said quietly, "I think we should step outside and let the children rest." "Actually," Karen said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I'd like to hear more about Uncle Victor." "What else did he tell you?" Marcus resumed tearing his coloring book pages, but Karen realized now that he was doing it in a specific pattern, creating long, thin strips that he was arranging in groups. "Letters." He was spelling something out. Emma caught Karen's attention and pointed to a specific spot on the Lego building, a tiny recreation of the courthouse steps where Karen now realized Victor's girlfriend had died. "Uncle Victor said the truth was hidden in plain sight," Emma whispered. "He said grown-ups always look for complicated hiding places, but kids know that sometimes the best place to hide something is exactly where it happened." Karen's mind raced. Victor had hidden his evidence at the courthouse, somewhere near the scene of Morrison's crime. "That's enough," Chen said, unsnapping her holster. "Karen, we need to talk. Now." But Marcus had finished arranging his paper strips. Karen could read the message clearly, "Help US." In that moment, Karen understood that these children weren't just witnesses or victims, they were prisoners of war in a conflict between justice and corruption. They'd been taught to memorize information, to communicate in codes, to trust no one except the dangerous man who died trying to save them. "Detective Chen," Karen said, standing slowly, "I think there's been a terrible mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Karen moved toward the window, noting the positions of the social workers and the uniformed officer. "I think Viktor Kozlov wasn't the kidnapper. I think he was trying to rescue these children from the real monsters." Chen drew her weapon. "Karen, step away from the window." But Karen was already in motion, grabbing Emma's hand while shouting, "Run!" The living room exploded into chaos. The uniformed officer lunged toward Marcus, but the 8-year-old was ready, kicking over a floor lamp that crashed into the man's legs. Ethan grabbed his Lego building and followed his sister and Karen toward the kitchen, where one of the social workers was fumbling for her radio. Karen shoulder-checked the woman, sending her sprawling, then kicked open the back door. "Move!" Move. Chen's voice followed them, all units, suspects fleeing on foot. 3 children and 1 adult female, armed and dangerous. They ran across the backyard, Karen's wounded shoulder screaming with every step. Behind them, she could hear Chen coordinating with backup units, sealing off the neighborhood. This way, Emma gasped, pulling Karen toward a gap in the fence that separated the safe house from the property behind it. Uncle Victor showed us escape routes. They squeezed through the opening and found themselves in another backyard, this one belonging to an elderly woman who was watering her tomatoes. The woman looked up in surprise as 4 fugitives crashed through her garden. "I'm sorry," Karen called out, not slowing down. "Call the FBI. Tell them Morrison is dirty." They made it to the street before the first police cruiser appeared at the intersection ahead. Karen pulled the children behind a parked car, her mind racing through options. They were trapped in a suburban neighborhood with limited escape routes. And no transportation. There, Marcus pointed toward a small church at the end of the block. Uncle Victor said churches were sanctuaries. That even bad police couldn't hurt people inside them. As they ran toward St. Mary's Community Church, Karen realized that Victor had prepared these children for exactly this scenario. He'd taught them escape routes, safe houses, and survival strategies because he'd known that one day they might need to run from the very people who were supposed to protect them. They burst through the church's side door into the sanctuary, where a handful of elderly parishioners were setting up for evening services. The priest, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and calloused hands, looked up in alarm. "Please," Karen gasped, "we need help. The police are after us, but they are not the good guys." Father Miguel, his nameplate sat on a nearby pew, stuttered. Their faces, taking in Karen's hospital bracelet, the children's frightened expressions, and the sound of sirens getting closer. "Are these the children from the news?" he asked. "The ones you saved?" "I didn't save them," Karen said, the truth finally clear to her. "I prevented them from being saved. And now the people who are using them want to silence all of us." "Father." Miguel nodded slowly. "There's a basement entrance that leads to the school next door. From there you can reach the subway tunnels." As they prepared to disappear into the underground, Emma tugged on Karen's SLE.